So left university now, had my job, earning a good income. In 2007, I had the financial crisis. I can't invest in property. That would have been the best time. 2020, we had the pandemic. I was more prepared. Now's the best time to kind of go out and take advantage.
You've got 8 rent to rent. How much does an average rent to rent make, would you say, typically in London?
Bringing in just under 100K worth of fees.
Damn, bro.
The best way to sell is not actually selling, but through telling stories. Buying a house in the UK is ridiculously long.
I'm changing that. Watch the space.
Yeah, being around people within the academy, it kind of pushes you even further.
How can you expect people to invest in you when you don't even invest in you? The thing is, landlords generally want 2 things. They want their rent to be paid on time, and they want the property to be kept in good condition.
I'm offering a service here. I'm offering value to you. It's a no-brainer. Like, why would you not do a rent to rent?
Well, firstly, thanks for coming to my house, and congratulations on your huge success. You've done real estate in many different dimensions: rent to rent, buy to let, estate agency. What's your favourite part to property and real estate?
I think my bread and butter was rent to rent.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of got started. And for me, what has kind of been my core of the business. So obviously right now I do quite a few things in property. So I like to call them my pillars. And in the center of that is rent to rent, so property management. And then I do like what I've recently kind of got into when I went full time in property, which is selling real estate, especially kind of the luxury end of selling real estate. So for me, that's exciting.
How much property have you sold then over the last year or so?
So I got started selling real estate last year. So in my first year, I sold 4 houses. So circa £5 million worth of kind of sales.
Yeah.
Bringing in just under 100K worth of fees. So
damn, bro, 100K. And that's just not even the main pillar.
Yeah, that's not the main pillar. So 100K worth of fees. Obviously, it wasn't all in my pocket. Yeah. Obviously, when I first kind of got started, I worked with one of the companies that are kind of disrupting the market, which is Nash Real Estate.
Big respect.
Yeah, doing amazing things in terms of changing the way how estate agency is done. So obviously, at the moment in the UK, you got the big corporate entities like Foxtons, Winkworth, Dexter's. So we've looked to like places like America, for example, and you got people like Ryan Serhant or Josh Altman. Or you go to Australia, Tom Panos. These amazing people that have like accountability and helping their clients get great results. And I think that was kind of needed in the UK. So I think what you will see going forward in the next few years to come is a lot more personal agents like myself, like Nash, or all the hundreds that will be coming very forward, helping their clients get amazing results.
Because you watch the movies or the documentaries where they're selling houses in America and they're getting like paid like £1 million to sell a house and stuff like that, and it's just crazy. It doesn't really happen here in the UK so much.
It doesn't, not at all.
And another thing is as well, the higher end market, like you're talking about selling 5 houses and making 100 grand in fees. Like if you're selling a small house and a big house, the effort's the same.
The effort's the same. So we've got some houses coming up. They're up north in Blackpool. Landlord selling his portfolio. It's worth about 4 million, but that's about 40 houses. Yeah. Where you can sell 4 houses and get the same fee. So,
or 1 house.
1 house, exactly. So
yeah.
Definitely, if you're going to do something, it makes you work smarter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So rent to rents are kind of the pillar of your business. How many rent to rents do you have at the moment?
So we've got 8 rent to rents in the business, 5 of which are HMOs. And then since leaving the eviction, we went on to take 3 SAs. So right now it's kind of a mixture of having HMOs and SAs. For me, I think it's always good to have a hybrid approach in terms of whatever you're doing, so that if anything was to happen in the market, like another pandemic or anything like that, is you can easily switch between nightly stays or monthly stays.
So when you've got rent to rents, you've got serviced accommodation, which is short stay lets. You've got your own estate agency where you're selling high end properties. How do you focus when you've got so much different things and so many different strategies going on? I mean, is that a good thing, or do you find yourself scattered? What do you think?
So I think definitely you've got to have a lot of structure in terms of what it is that you're doing when you are kind of doing multiple things. And for me, especially kind of doing this kind of now full time, is helped me to kind of structure what it is that I'm doing and focusing different parts of the business. And then also delegating as well, which is very, very important, something which I've had transferable skills. So I used to be a project manager. That was my bread and butter. So that has enabled me how to kind of delegate what it is that I need to kind of get done across that business.
What was your previous occupancy? What were you doing exactly?
So I was a project manager for the largest airplane manufacturer in the world, which is Boeing. So I was handling a lot of their IT implementation projects. So they are predominantly an American company. So my role was to kind of help them transfer over their software solutions into the international space.
And how did you go from that to getting into property? What happened?
Well, I mean, I've always had a passion for property from a very, very young age. I think my family's kind of always kind of been around property. My granddad, when he kind of first came over to the UK, so he came over from Jamaica during the kind of the Windrush area. And he actually lived in a HMO, but it probably wasn't called a HMO back then. So him and my grandma lived in a house, they had a room, and obviously they rented out the other rooms in the house.
Yeah.
So one of the things he always said, it was one, invest in property, and two, get a trade, learn a trade. And so I've always kind of been around kind of property environment. My mum's was a landlord, kind of growing up and seeing her invest in property and kind of being a landlord. And then went to university, studied business and marketing at university. And you know what, I've always had that entrepreneurial background, entrepreneurial spirit, So I always wanted to kind of be my own boss and kind of invest in property, watching things like Homes Under the Hammer.
Yeah.
That was my thing, that inspired me, Homes Under the Hammer. I had a good job out of university. I was a self-employed driving instructor, earning decent money at the time. Great, I'm gonna save up a pot of cash, I'm gonna invest into property. So left university now, had my job, earning a good income. In 2007, we had the financial crisis. And I thought, damn, I can't invest in property now. Everyone's saying the market's crashing. So you don't know what you don't know. So at that time, I was very uneducated. That would have been the best time to take advantage of that situation. So I ended up kind of doing driving instructing for a number of years, then kind of wanted to change career. Then went into the corporate world. So I retrained in IT, started out as an intern, then rose myself up through the company, hard work, grind, and then became a project manager. But in the back of my mind, there was always that kind of burning desire to kind of get back into property. So it wasn't until 2019, stumbled on YouTube, rent to rent, seeing yourself there, talking about this amazing thing that you can kind of do in property, where you can control property without actually kind of owning it. So this is amazing, great. 2020, we had the situation, we had the pandemic. But for me, I now was in a better situation because I knew I was more prepared, and now's the best time to kind of go out and take advantage of offering landlords a service. Look, this is happening in the world, we can give you guaranteed rent.
I think there's so many people that are in normal jobs that have a desire to get into property, to be their own boss.
Yeah.
How long did it take you from when you just saw the YouTube videos? I know you joined the academy.
Yeah.
When did you join the academy and start coming to the trainings? When was that?
So it was December 2020.
2020. So back into 2020. Yeah. How long did it take you from really deciding, right, I'm going to go at it, we're in lockdown, pandemic, joining the academy, before getting to the point whereby you were financially independent and you could leave your job?
So yeah, so it was the beginning of 2020, obviously when we had the kind of pandemic, is obviously saw the videos and obviously kind of started off kind of doing it stuff on my own, reaching out to yourself and other mentors to kind of help me kind of get those first rent to rents. And it was kind of really the end of 2020, you know what, I need to really kind of scale and kind of grow this. And obviously being around like people within the academy, it kind of pushes you even further to come and get more and do more, rather than having that kind of limiting belief. Yeah.
When did you go full-time in property?
So full-time in property was last year, 2021.
2021.
It was actually on my birthday.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes.
So with your HMOs and your rent-to-rents and stuff,
they're
in London.
Yeah.
How are you finding the market with getting landlords to agree to give you their properties in London? Because one of the things that I'm hearing a lot is that London's a tough market.
London's tough. I mean, landlords are absolutely greedy at the moment.
Yeah.
Obviously, the rents are kind of going up at the moment. Obviously, what's kind of going on with the cost of living, and just trying to kind of get landlords agree a decent rent is hard at the same time. But sometimes you've got to find a landlord who needs a problem solving, whether he has a house, for example, he needs work doing to it. So recently we took on a property where the landlord didn't have any money, but his property was in this terrible state. So we offered him a service, offered him a solution. So it's all about trying to find a win-win, so to speak, for the landlord. Obviously, you have other factors that are inflating the market, especially in London. A lot of people kind of doing supported living, which is kind of giving the landlords the kind of impression, oh, I can get $5,000 for my 3-bedroom house, where up somewhere else, you can get something different.
How are you finding landlords, and how are you pitching them on doing a rent-to-rent?
So yeah, as landlords, I think it's about having a good conversation, understanding what are the pain points, because at the end of the day, they're a landlord, they got into it to probably kind of do it themselves. So the best way to try and get your good landlords is kind of direct, rather than obviously going through an estate agent. have a conversation, try to listen and understand what their pain points are, whether it's managing the tenants that are not paying the rent, having to deal with the maintenance issues, and offer them, say, well, I can take away that burden from you. I can give you the guaranteed rent that you're looking for, the peace of mind, especially, for example, now with the mortgage rates kind of going up, they might not be making as much money, is looking at creative strategies like service accommodation or HMOs that they maybe even come in on a profit share, for example.
Okay. Have you got that with your rent-to-rents?
I haven't got a profit share at the moment, but it's something that I will be kind of doing going forward.
Right.
As it will help me scale a lot quicker in terms of taking on.
I mean, you scale you've got 8 rent-to-rents, you've got 3 more going through at the moment. Yeah. You're making very good money. How much does an average rent-to-rent make, would you say, typically in London?
So typically in London, you're looking about, for a HMO, is about £800.
£800 a month.
£800 to £1,000.
So if you've got 2 or 3 of those, that's going to replace your salary. Yeah. But I'm just trying to work out, like you say, speak to landlords direct, find their pain points. How do you find landlords direct? Where do you go?
The best place for me to kind of go is Gumtree, Facebook, Open Rent. So where landlords are advertising their properties, so they're trying to do it themselves. They're trying to get out of paying estate agents. They may have worked with an estate agent. They're not happy with their service that they're kind of getting. They're feeling they're very lazy and they want to kind of, I can do it myself. Also networking. So speaking to landlords at networking events. Yeah. So going to like the NRLA and they put on 1,000 events, or the Property Investor Show. Speaking to landlords, you want to circulate with them.
Do you think sometimes rent-to-rents has a little bit of almost like a bad name? Like landlords are a bit like, rent-to-rents. Whereas actually it's like, well, sorry, it's a brilliant service. We're given a guaranteed rent with a nice company contract on a long-term lease. Where does the stigma come from?
For me, it's a no-brainer. Like, why would you not do a rent-to-rent?
From a landlord's perspective, because you're not trying to get a property that's £1,000 a month and try and knock them down to 600. You're generally paying the going rate, but then just increasing the value by running it on short stay lets. If it's obviously if it's in Greater London, there's rules and there's laws. You may not be able to do that. You may have to do it as a HMO. But where do you think the stigma comes from?
I think the stigma comes from a lot of people doing it incorrectly. Especially in the beginning when rent-to-rent was a buzzword. They could earn lots and lots of money doing it. You don't own property, you just control it. So a lot of people are uneducated doing it. So a lot of the time when you're calling landlords or estate agents, say, no, sorry, don't do company lets. We're actually listening and understanding the value in it. The beauty about rent-to-rent is you're offering a service, and that's what you as a rent-to-renter have to kind of go into that conversation and believe in, I'm offering a service here. I'm offering value to you in terms of what it is that you're providing.
What do you say when a landlord says, because I know what I say, I'm interested in what you say, when a landlord says, we don't do company lets. No, we don't do company lets. Do you go, no problem, or do you talk them around? Or what would you say?
I'd say, okay, I understand. Many people, landlords that I speak to initially say they don't do company lets. Can I understand what's your particular reason? Because my landlord I spoke to he didn't want to do company lets because he felt that property might have been devalued. And we had a conversation about it and said, explained to him our model. But let me understand, Mr. Landlord, what's your reason why? So I've got to find them the reason why to kind of get them to open up. Oh yeah, I had a bad experience, I had a company let, they didn't pay the rent. Okay, I understand, obviously it'd be terrible if someone didn't pay the rent, and I understand how you must feel, you didn't get to pay your mortgage on time. So get their pain points, you've got to make them feel the pain. And I would say, well, what we do as a company, obviously we're professional, we've been running for a number of years, and as a guarantee to you as a landlord, is we take out insurance policies against all of our tenants. So you know that each and every single month that you're going to get your rent paid, guaranteed, backed up by an insurance policy.
That sounds good. I had a conversation with a guy. I was running a program called the Rent-to-Rent Revolution, and I called a landlord, and the landlord said, don't do company lets. I said, oh, that's absolutely fine. No problem, I understand. I said, have you had a bad experience? And he said, yes. I said, what happened? He said, oh, I could write a book on how bad my experience was with a company let. And he started going on about what happened. Well, this happened, and then there was a party, and then this, and then they did this, and they didn't. And he was telling me, and I said, that sounds really bad. It sounds like they made that company was awful. They made a lot of schoolboy errors and didn't really know what they were doing. I said, our company, how we work is we have this in place, and we have CCTV, and we have alarms that go off, and we have this, and we have any guest that needs to stay in the property, we check their ID. And as I was explaining how we're a little bit different, not in a salesy way, but just saying, oh, that sounds terrible. Did they not have this? Did they not have this in place? Did they have insurance? And then he said, it sounds like you know what you do. He goes, look, come and have a viewing on the property, and then we'll have a conversation. I came down and viewed the apartment. It turns out he owns the whole block.
Oh, wow.
He owns the whole, and he was like, all right, take it. I've got lots of property. Anytime another property comes up within the block, Okay. So
Right.
sometimes it's about knowing what to say to the landlord, but not just knowing what to say, but also knowing how to back it up.
Yeah.
Because you can't say, "Oh, we know what we're doing. We're trained and experienced," and when you're not.
Because everyone's gonna say that. Everyone's gonna say, "Oh, we can do this, we can do that." But you got to demonstrate that you can do it.
Yeah.
And obviously, and the key thing is just like listening and understand what is.
How do you find the landlord's pain points? Because let's face it, Nick, if you phone up a landlord and they're advertising their property, all they want to do on that conversation is say, "Do you want to come and see the property? Do you want to book a viewing? Do you want to rent it?" Like,
Yeah.
when you say find their pain points, could you give me an example of what you mean?
So if you call them up on the phone, obviously if you're going to get the viewing straight away, and have a face-to-face conversation, which I think is always a lot easier
Right.
than trying to kind of do it over the phones. That's one of my kind of techniques, is trying to kind of get the viewing, meet them face-to-face, and obviously that way you can kind of relate to people a lot more.
Yeah.
Because remember, communication, 70% is non-verbal.
Yeah.
So the more you kind of, if you're with them face-to-face. And also what I like to do is tell stories. The best way to sell is not necessarily selling, but through telling stories.
Yeah.
I've had a landlord very similar to you in this situation. He was renting with an estate agent. He was unhappy with the service, just like yourself, or he had this particular bad story, just like yourself. And that way you're providing your case studies into that storytelling.
The thing is, landlords generally want two things. They want their rent to be paid on time,
Yeah.
and they want the property to be
Take
kept
it.
in good condition.
Yeah, that's it.
So if you can do that, but then you can find a way to add value
Yeah.
and run it on short stay lets, and you have the infrastructure to do that,
Yeah.
and make £800-900 a month per property, and you've got 8 of those,
Yeah.
and then 3 more in the pipeline. It's incredible.
And especially, for example, using creative strategies like service accommodation, and say, well, you're getting this amount of money with your current let as a single let, is let's look at what you could potentially make as a nightly stay. And that's why it kind of goes back to the point where getting them involved in a kind of share agreement, for example, you kind of take a profit share,
Yeah.
is a way for them to say, well, I can earn a little bit more.
The risk is smaller for you because you're saying, look, I'll run it as service accommodation, and whatever profit we can split it.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't make profit, you're not losing.
Yeah, so you're taking the management, so you're agreeing your management fee.
Yeah.
It's going to be slightly reduced management fee than what you was doing if you're doing a guaranteed rent. But you're saying, well, I'm not guaranteeing the rent, for example, if it doesn't be successful, but my main job is for it to be successful, and run it based on the evidence that we've provided in terms of looking at the data, analysing what is the average occupancy rates in terms of what the nightly stays are, to make sure that we're going to go into it and make it a winning success.
What do you prefer? Do you prefer deal selling or being an estate agent? The difference is very obvious. People sometimes get confused. Deal selling is when you find deals that are usually with agents already.
Yeah.
You find them, you negotiate them, and then you pass it on to an investor and you get paid a fee for your work. What you're doing is very different. Because what you're doing is you're being an estate agent.
Yeah.
So you're literally listing properties on the market, and you're getting paid not by the investor, but you're getting paid by the seller. What do you prefer?
I prefer estate agency.
Do you? Interesting.
And I think in the UK, compared to other places in the world, is in the UK you work on behalf of the seller. There's no one in the UK that's really kind of set up a business that works on behalf of the buyer. And I want to also maybe be a pioneer for some people in the UK. That if you're going into your journey, for example, you want to buy your first time buyer, or you're looking to upsize your house or downsize, is to help you handle that transaction, negotiate with the estate agency on fees, handle the process in terms of dealing with the conveyancing process. Because let's take it, I know you spoke about this many times before, buying a house in the UK is ridiculously long.
Yeah, I'm changing that. Watch this
Yeah,
space.
it takes like 5 to 6 months just to transact on a house. It's absolutely crazy. And the percentage of houses that fall down during that chain from having the sale agreed is...
1 in 3.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous.
Which is why when you see a house on Rightmove and it says it's sold subject to contract, a lot of people think, oh, it's sold, not bother. No. There's a good chance it'll fall through.
It'll fall through.
Ring up!
So for me, for example, I like the enjoyment, for example, of seeing someone, they want to move into the house and going through that transaction. That's what you get as a personal estate agent. You have someone that's going to be in your corner, fighting you from start all the way through to completion. Yeah. And obviously you get the big fees at the end of it, which is fantastic. But yeah, I do like that. But for me, also deal selling. For now, obviously, kind of being on the eviction, obviously had that deal selling challenge.
How much money did you guys make in 2 days?
So in 2 days, our team made, I think it was 18
grand.
18 grand.
I think it was 40 or 42 grand.
Yeah, overall.
Overall amongst, there was only, 8 people?
Yeah.
In 24 hours?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things from the eviction that I've taken forward is that if you give yourself a year to do something, you're going to take a year. If you give yourself a week or day to do something, you give yourself that time to do it.
When you first joined the academy, I know your nan passed.
Yeah.
Like literally 2 weeks after.
Yeah.
And you kind of went a little bit AWOL.
Yeah.
And went off the radar a little bit for a while. And I think it's really important that people know that everyone's on their own journey. It would have been really easy for you to see everybody else winning.
Yeah.
And 2 months, 3 months, oh my gosh, these people are all making really good money. But everyone has their own journey and their own path. Could you talk to me a little bit about some of the struggles and problems that you've had within your business?
So when I joined the academy back in December, 2 weeks after my grand sadly passed away, and obviously for me it took a bit of a kind of a knock back in terms of kind of my mindset, in terms of where I was at, and many things that happen along in your journey. But the key thing is you got to do is make sure that you have a very strong why. And for me, that's my family, my partner, my kids. To help me kind of want to kind of leave a legacy, something that you're doing very, very, very well. And that's the challenges that I've had, obviously, when I went into property kind of full time, is not having that kind of safety net, so people having a job, making sure bills have got to get paid, doing multiple things in property, having to manage my time. So these are kind of the challenges, roadblocks that you kind of get to face over that period of time.
How do your family feel about what you've done? Because normally, generally speaking, at the beginning, your family and friends, a lot of them are like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? But then when the money starts rolling in, it's like, okay, and they see the results. What were your friends and family like when you first got started, and how are they now?
I mean, my close friends, they've always known that I've been kind of like almost like a hustler. Next, I'm going to grind, whatever you do. I've changed my career multiple times. Whatever I'm doing, I'm always going to kind of work hard and kind of be the best. But at the same time, is obviously partners there and say, well, you should get a job.
Oh wow, is that what your partner told you?
Yeah, she's going to go back and get a job you need to do, but whatever you're going to do, I'm going to support it. But sometimes you need to kind of, let's kind of look at the reality of the situation. But this is my passion. This is what I want to do. And I'm going to keep going until I'm going to be successful.
Yeah. What did your partner say when you enrolled onto the deal finding extravaganza?
So she went to say, no, why you spend all the money on the training? You can kind of do it. You don't need to do it. You can kind of do it yourself. But I said, look, you need to surround yourself with like-minded people. Yeah. You need to make sure that you're in that environment continuously, feeding your mind, getting the knowledge, and kind of getting education. And might go, well, it costs this amount of money, but I'm going to make X amount of money going back. And obviously you've done.
Well, exactly. You used to be a driving instructor.
Yeah.
Imagine if someone said they didn't want to pay for a driving instructor because they think they could figure it out themselves on YouTube.
Exactly.
What would you think?
Crazy. I think it's all about mindset as well. We think we go to school, we might go to a college, we might go to university, but education stops there. And that's a terrible mindset. You always have to be continually developing what is. When sometimes you have to pay for that. You have to invest in yourself, especially when you're speaking to an investor, for example. You're trying to get investment from them. But if you're not prepared to invest in yourself, then it's crazy.
Really good point, yeah. How can you expect people to invest in you when you don't even invest in you?
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Talk to me about the eviction and what happened. And firstly, how did you feel that you came across when you watched it back?
Yeah, it was good and weird, just kind of watching yourself back on TV. Obviously, as I said on the eviction, I wouldn't have gone into that process if I didn't feel I had the skills and capabilities to go and to win it. I could give you a whole bunch of stories of what happened and excuses, but that's not me. I know, for example, where I could have done differently, especially on the task that we kind of lost. So the first task was great. Obviously, we had to kind of stage the barn, kind of getting it done in a short period of time. Lots of creative stuff that we did. For example, even like getting a lease option on a table, which was great. And then obviously kind of the deal selling part of it as well, when we got a massive amount of deals sold and agreed in such a short pace of time. I think I come across well on there. I think one of the comments you made, you said, I know Nick's a hustler, he grinds, and I think that's what I want to kind of show as well. Yeah. And for me, obviously, it went down to me and Adam in the last kind of two on that particular round, and I lost out to the eventual winner. So
right.
I can at least say to that. Yeah. But no, I think I came across well. Obviously, the thing that on that challenge I didn't get to sell, but I know, for example, had that kind of deal that had kind of gone through, obviously might have been a different story.
Yeah, and ultimately, I agree. I think you came across really well, and everybody on the eviction's doing extremely well. Absolutely, I mean, I'm interviewing everyone back to back now on Winners on a Wednesday. Isabella, Ricky, yourself, Adam. So it's incredible to see how well everyone's doing. And
I made 9 good friends, good connections. I think when you're in that kind of environment, it's almost like so intense. And you think you're only there for like 2 or 3 weeks, but you're with them every single day, and you're all kind of striving for this, all hungry, and so amazing bunch of people, and everyone is doing amazing.
So you've got a couple of buy-to-lets. How are your buy-to-lets doing in this market?
So buy-to-lets are pretty good. One of them, we just went through a remortgage. We're hoping to pull out 50 grand in terms of equity, but obviously with the market and the lending situation, based on the way they changed their calculations, we had to kind of just stay with our mortgage provider and just did a switch product of the rate. so we wasn't able to pull out that cash.
Are you putting out any cash?
But when they changed the situation in lending, we wasn't able to pull out the money.
Sure.
But we're looking at a creative way where we can kind of take maybe a second charge on the property.
Where are you buy-to-let?
So one buy-to-let is in Slough, so where I used to live,
Yeah.
and the other buy-to-let is in South London.
Nice. And those properties, are they cash flowing positive?
Yeah.
What do you prefer, owning properties or controlling properties?
I think controlling is very, very good because obviously you can scale a lot quicker. Let's say, for example, if you have in the mindset, I need to own, it's going to take you a long time to kind of get the deposit and save up for the deposit and all the fees that come associated with that. You've got the deposit, legals, all that stuff where you can say, let's say 50 grand, for example, to buy a house for 200 grand, you can take the 50 grand and get 5 rent-to-rents.
Yeah.
And cash flow great. And then once you have the cash flow, because cash is king, as they say, then you can put it into ownership.
So the ownership's good for your wealth building, long-term growth.
Long-term.
But ultimately to get out your job. Because as you mentioned earlier, it takes 5-6 months just to buy a house.
Yeah.
Whereas get a rent-to-rent, 5-6 days. And then a buy-to-let and a rent-to-rent are probably going to give you a similar amount of cash flow.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't know many people that are making more than £800-900 a month cash flow from buy-to-lets.
Yeah.
So if anything, rent-to-rent's going to give you more monthly income.
Yeah.
It's quicker. So if you want to get out your job, rent-to-rent's much better.
Yeah.
But then you should build up your long-term wealth.
Build up your long-term wealth. Put that money into the assets where you're owning. You're doing BRRs where you have a pot of cash and you're recycling that same pot of cash, and that's what's going to build up your long-term wealth.
What's your best advice for people watching this that maybe want to get into property? They want to, like yourself, do lots of different aspects to property, whether it be deal selling, rent-to-rents, buy-to-let ownership. What would you say to people that want to really get started?
If anyone's looking at this and wanting to kind of get started and think about, well, I'm in a job that I don't like, is first kind of just sit down with a blank piece of paper and understand where it is you are now, where it is you want to kind of get to. And then almost you're kind of working back from that goal and say, well, this is where I want to kind of get to and how can I get there? But the key thing is not having that kind of limited belief. Imagine what you could do if you couldn't fail. So go into it with that mindset. And then make sure whatever it is you're going to do is that you put yourself in the right environment to get the right knowledge. And then when you get the right knowledge, they say knowledge is power, but it's potential power without taking the right action.
Yeah.
So I call it KBA, knowledge, belief, action.
Yeah, love that. And what's the plan then for this year?
So for this year, as I said, it's going back to my 3 pillars. The core business, which is obviously rent-to-rent and property management, we're going to be scaling, we're going to be growing that. So taking on more rent-to-rents, taking on more managements, to kind of build up that kind of cash flow. Selling real estate, so I've launched my own real estate company, which is Nicholas Eiffel Real Estate. So the key there is to kind of grow that, work with homeowners to kind of get the maximum price for their home, specializing in the luxury real estate, and then deal selling as well. So for me, it's kind of those 3 pillars, building a team, building a business, because I also want to kind of get to the point where I'm not in the business, because otherwise you don't have a job. So I want to kind of get to the point where I can build it and then I can step out of it as well.
Yeah, incredible. What does your partner think about what you're doing now? Now she's seen the results and everything. She's seen the eviction.
And my partner believes in me, which I'm very, very grateful for. It's hard as well. Obviously, she's there to see, well, we've got a young family, we've got to provide, but I know that I have her support and I'm very ever indebted to her for that.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you to her for supporting me through this journey.
Amazing, bro. Well, massive respect for what you've done and what you've achieved. Thanks for coming out.
I appreciate it.
And I look forward to watching you continue to win, bro.